would never want to hurt him, ever. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I did. I don't remember. I remember holding him and kissing him. And he was just bleeding out.
The Florida night is a living thing. It breathes humidity thick, heavy, alive. Inside the small house, an air conditioning hums a low mechanical drone that provides the only barrier against the oppressive subtropical deck. It is just past midnight on June 17th, 2023. In one bedroom, Jordan, the couple's roommate, is asleep. He's been asleep for maybe 2 hours, lost in that shallow, dreamless state that alcohol and heat induce. A sound penetrates the night. A muffled pop, not a car, not a firecracker, something else. Jordan doesn't register it, not consciously. This is Florida. Strange sounds are the norm. The houses are built of plywood and hope, and every noise from the outside world feels like it's inside with you. A single small pop isn't enough to pull him from the heavy alcohol-induced fog. But the next sound is. The next sound cuts through the mechanical hum of the AC, through the layers of sleep, and slices directly into his brain. A woman's scream, raw, piercing, desperate. It's Brittany. Her voice is a razor. Why did she scream like that? What just happened? Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're diving deep into the chilling case that revolves around the love story of a young woman named Brittany and that haunting noise. Did something happen to her? Oh, absolutely. No more waiting. Let's jump right into the next part of the story. Jordan is out of bed. His heart doesn't just pound, it detonates in his chest, a violent explosion of adrenaline that instantly vaporizes the fog of sleep. He stumbles out of his dark room and into the hallway, his own name being shrieked, not called. Jordan, Jordan. Brittany, what's wrong? He calls back, his voice thick with sleep and confusion. He emerges from the dark hallway into the dim, ambient light of the living room, and the world stops. She is there, Brittany Holbrook, the other half of her 9-month relationship with his friend. But she is not the focus. The focus is on the floor, Tyler Newlish. Her boyfriend is lying on his back. His eyes are open but empty, unfocused. Something is very wrong. Brittany is screaming, clutching his head, her voice cracking in panic, her whole body shaking as she calls his name over and over. Jordan stands frozen at the doorway, his mind refusing to process what he's seeing. It feels unreal, like a nightmare that refuses to fade. Then it hits him, the smell. The air is dense, carrying that sharp metallic trace of something terribly wrong, mixed with the stale bitterness of spilled beer and the sour, lingering stench of a night that went out of control. All right. By now, everyone can probably picture the scene and the horror of what just unfolded. Naturally, Jordan panics, shouting his friend's name again and again. Tyler, only 30 years old. How could this be happening? 1,000 questions race through his mind. He tries to ask Brittany what happened, but her words come out scattered and incoherent. She insists she doesn't know anything. Maybe she doesn't. Or maybe she does. No one can say for sure. But faced with the sight of his friend barely hanging on, still breathing, whispering what might be his final words, Jordan grabs his phone and calls 911, reporting that his friend Tyler Newlish, 30, is in critical danger. He may have been shot. Let me explain a bit. That sound we mentioned earlier, Jordan is now certain it was a gunshot. He can see it clearly. Tyler has a wound on his back. It's horrifying. As for Brittany, she's still holding him, rocking back and forth, her movements strange, almost theatrical. Is it shock or something else entirely? That's what investigators will have to find out. As Jordan talks on the phone, trying to make sense of the chaos, Tyler, his friend, summons the last fading ember of life. He turns his head in a small, agonizing movement and searches for Jordan in the dimness. His lips move. He whispers just a breath, ragged and thin. Jordan leans in, ear next to his friend's mouth, the 911 operator still asking questions on the other line. What? What did you say, man? I can't hear you. Tyler presses his lips together, mouth damp, forcing out the final sound with all the strength he has left. A hoarse, almost inaudible confession. The operator's voice fades. Brittany's wail fades. For a moment, the whisper is the only thing that exists. He will never forget those words, the words that will seal her fate. That shot me in the back. It wasn't supposed to end this way. It never is. 9 months. That's all it was. 9 months is the time it takes to create a new life. It's also the time it took for Brittany Holbrook and Tyler Newlish to build a world and then burn it to the ground. They met like many do in the casual, overlapping orbit of mutual friends. By all accounts, Brittany was magnetic. She was the one who filled the room, the loud, fun center of attention. Tyler was the counterbalance kind, a hunter, a man's man with a soft spot. He seemed to be the steady anchor for her storm. Friends said they were inseparable. They called each other soulmates. And I have to stop right there. Soulmates. That word gets thrown around so much, doesn't it? It's the label people reach for when they're moving too fast. A pretty glaze brushed over cracks they don't want to see. When someone declares they've found a soulmate after a few weeks, it's usually not evidence of depth. It's a flare of desperation, a dash of recklessness. A beautiful word, yes, and a dangerous one. Now, exceptions exist. Sometimes two people meet, and it just fits. It's rare, but it happens. If that's your story, congratulations. I wish you both the very best. But in toxic relationships, intensity is almost always mistaken for intimacy. The screaming matches and the breathless makeups can feel like high romance. They're not. They're the warning signs of a slow-motion wreck. And they were reckless. They moved fast. In less than a year, they were living together. They found a place, and their mutual friend Jordan moved in as a roommate. On paper, it was a perfect little arrangement. 3 friends against the world, splitting rent, enjoying the endless Florida summer. On the surface, it was idyllic. Weekend barbecues, trips to the beach, nights spent drinking beer on the porch. But beneath that surface, something else was festering. A friend would later testify, providing a crucial, chilling detail that we will come back to. But this friend also provided a description of Brittany when she drank. She would get, and I quote, sloppy and violent. Okay, so this video can pass every YouTube filter. I'm going to swap those words for something similar in meaning. It'll sound a bit softer, of course. I'll call it aggressive. Think about that for a moment. Sloppy and aggressive, not giggly, not sleepy, not emotional. This isn't casual drinking, it's a flip of a switch. When intoxicated, she doesn't just lose her inhibitions, she loses self-control and empathy. It suggests alcohol didn't blur the edges for her. It gave them a sharper edge. What does sloppy and aggressive look like in a relationship? It can look like thrown objects, shoves and shouting matches that spiral out of control. It's a powder keg in the living room. This brings us back to that night, June 17th, 2023. It started as so many tragedies do, with a few drinks. It was summertime. They were home. The alcohol was flowing. We don't know what they were drinking or how much, but we know what that friend said. And we know that for some people, a few drinks is all it takes to unlock a door inside them, a door that should be kept padlocked and chained. What were they talking about that night? Was it a good night that took a sudden dark turn, or was the entire night a performance, a thin veneer of soulmate happiness stretched taut over a core of resentment? We know from Jordan that he went to bed. His presence was the buffer. What happens when the buffer is removed? What happens when the audience is gone and the two actors are left alone on stage? Was there a simmering argument all night? A quiet tension held in check only by Jordan's presence. The air in that small house must have been thick with unspoken things. Sometime after midnight, Jordan, the roommate, decided to call it a night. He'd been asleep for about 2 hours, he said. He left Brittany and Tyler to their drinks and their soulmate connection. The last he saw, everything appeared to be fine. Everything was fine. Until it wasn't. Till the pop. And the scream.
Traffic, Florida,
You don't know? I went to sleep. I don't know.
The first deputies on scene walk into a charnel house. Jordan is on the porch, pale, shaking his phone still clutched in his hand. He's the first one they see. Inside, he gasps, "My friend, he's shot." Inside, Brittany Holbrook is still over Tyler's body. The body cam footage is shocking. It was played for the jury, and it is devastating. She is wailing a primal, animalistic sound of distress, but it's the sound without the substance. I don't know, she screams at the deputies as they pull her away from the body.
I don't know. I would never want to hurt him, ever. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I did. I don't remember.
And let's pause on that. That's the first thing she says. Before anyone has accused her of anything, before they've even asked what happened, an innocent person's first words would be, "Help him," or "Who did this?" or "Someone broke in." Her first words were a preemptive defense. "I would never want to hurt him." It's a statement about her character, not about the event that just occurred. Her focus is already immediately on her own culpability. Deputies secure the scene. Tyler is transported to a local hospital. It's a formality. He is pronounced deceased shortly after arrival. The deputies separate witnesses. Jordan, the roommate, is in shock but coherent. He tells them what he saw, what he heard, and most importantly, what Tyler said. He said what... One of the deputies asks, his voice sharp with disbelief. Jordan takes a shaky breath. He said, "That shot me in the back." The room goes still. The investigation pivots on that single faint statement. Deputies look at one another. This doesn't look like a robbery gone wrong. It does not appear self-inflicted. Investigators now treat this as a homicide. The victim appeared to identify the shooter. Brittany is placed in the back of a patrol car. She's in shock, or she's putting on the performance of a lifetime. The body cam is still running, recording her every word, her every sob. The strobing lights flash across her blood-stained face. "Ma'am, what's going on?" a deputy asks through the cage. "I don't know," she cries. "Did you hear a gunshot?" She shakes her head, her stringy matted hair sticking to her cheeks. "No, I went to sleep. I don't know. I went to sleep." This is lie number one. Let's unpack this lie, because it is so fundamentally brazenly absurd. This is the go-to standard issue defense of the guilty. The "I blacked out, I don't remember" card. Her roommate in a separate bedroom down the hall was woken from a drunken sleep by the pop and the scream. But she, the woman who was in the same room as him, heard nothing. She was asleep. The lie doesn't even make internal sense. It's an insult to the intelligence of the investigators. It's a child's lie. And it's the first massive crack in her facade, a crack that will soon shatter. Inside the house, the forensics team is working. The house is small. A gunshot in this confined space wouldn't be a pop. It would be deafening, a concussive, ear-ringing blast. "It's probably going to be a gunshot," the deputy says on his body cam. "There's a casing right over here." "Yeah, in the kitchen area." Another deputy locates the gun. It hasn't been hidden. It's just there, on a surface. He picks it up carefully with a gloved hand. "It's warm," he says to his partner. He checks the cylinder. One bullet is missing. The warmth of the gun is critical. A gun doesn't stay warm for long. This wasn't fired an hour ago. This was fired minutes ago. At most, it directly physically contradicts her "I was asleep" timeline. The gun was fired. Jordan was woken up. He came out, he called 911, and police arrived. And the gun was still warm. The entire event from trigger pull to police arrival was a matter of minutes. The evidence is cold hard and immediate. A gun warm to the touch, a single spent casing on the floor, a body riddled with a fatal wound, a victim's dying declaration, and a girlfriend who claims she was asleep. She said no either, the deputy says, referring to his question about the gunshot. Lad grabbed the gun. It's warm. The pieces aren't just fitting together, they are snapping into place with terrifying magnetic speed. Jordan, the roommate, tells them who owns the gun. Jordan knew that Tyler was a hunter. So Tyler, a hunter, a man who knew and respected firearms, was killed with his own gun by the woman now sitting in a police car wailing and claiming she heard nothing.
How it happened?
Who owns that gun?
I don't, one of those, I'm pretty sure Tyler.
The sun is up. The chaotic flashing lights of the night have been replaced by the cold, sterile, fluorescent reality of a police interrogation room. Brittany Holbrook has been crying. The audio from the 911 call confirms it. You can hear her wailing. But here's the thing I've learned from watching hundreds of these tapes. There are two kinds of crying. There's the crying of grief, a gut-wrenching, soul-emptying despair. It's often silent. It's a physical, full-body collapse. It's an inward implosion of pain. And then there's the crying of stress, the crying of a cornered animal. It's loud. It's theatrical. It's a performance for the benefit of others. As the investigators would note, for all the sound of her grief, there was a distinct lack of physical evidence. Her eyes weren't red and puffy. There was a suspicious lack of actual physical tears. This is the performance. The crocodile tears. She's not crying for him. She's crying for herself. The detectives enter. They are not aggressive. They are not the bad cops. They are gentle. They are sympathetic. This is a classic brilliant interrogation technique. It's the false friend. They aren't going to break her down. They are going to give her an out. They are building her a bridge to a new story, a more plausible lie. They know "I was asleep" is a bust. They need her to commit to a new narrative, one they can then dismantle with their evidence. I know this whole sequence of events this morning was terrifying. Detective 1 begins, his voice soft, understanding. I understand how being in that situation, through your eyes, that's it. It's about to be game over. And at that point, I would be fighting for a... He is literally handing her the script. He is laying out the only possible defense she could have. He's giving her the magic words that could maybe save her. He's painting a picture of her as the victim. If it were me, he continues, my mind would go to, it's him or it's me. And I need to get out of this situation somehow. If you fought to get away and that's what ended up in this situation, I think everybody's going to understand that. Watch her. Watch her take the bait. The "I was asleep" story is gone. It evaporated the second she realized they didn't believe it. Now, a new story emerges. Story number 2, the self-defense lie. I'm not a murderer, she says, her voice suddenly defensive. I mean, it's about like, are you trying to get me to say I was responsible for what happened to him? And there it is. Nobody used the word murderer. She did. This is what detectives call guilty knowledge. An innocent person, even an accidental killer, would be screaming, "It was an accident," or "I was so scared," or "He was attacking me." A guilty person, on the other hand, immediately defaults to their own legal jeopardy. Am I going to jail? I'm not a murderer. Her focus isn't on the man she supposedly loved who just passed away in her arms. Her focus is on herself. The detective keeps pushing gently. We're going to have to get the complete story to even know if it's you versus him. It was him versus me in that situation. I know what I'm doing, especially if that gun is right there on the nightstand. I'm surviving. There it is again. Not what happened to Tyler, but what happens to me. She's negotiating. She's trying to figure out the consequences of this new story before she fully commits to it. She's shopping for the best lie. The detectives know they have her. Now, they just need the details of her new lie, and she gives it to them. She claims she remembers Tyler leaving the bed going to the bathroom. When he came back, she says he snapped. He was a completely different person. This is classic victim blaming. He wasn't just drunk. He snapped, became a different person, a monster. This absolves her of her relationship with him and recasts her as a victim of it. I think he just kept putting his hands on my neck again and again, she says, her voice trembling, the sobs returning. The phrase "again and again" is a key embellishment. It frames it as repeated, not a single moment. She is describing a prolonged, frightening ordeal. Detectives circle back to her account, asking how she managed to get away, when, as she claims, his hands were on her neck. She says she pushed back against the wall, that was it. When they ask if she lost awareness, she answers. I don't know the phrase she returns to whenever details get close. They remind her she'd said it was getting hard to breathe. She breaks down, repeating that she doesn't understand why any of it was happening. And question after question, she hesitates. Sometimes it's, I don't know. Sometimes it's silence, less a memory than improv without a script. When she hasn't settled on a version, the only line she's got is, I don't know. She pieces the story together bit by bit, borrowing from the script the detectives fed her. She says he was on top of her in the bed. Then she claims he grabbed her, pinned her against the wall, and squeezed. She keeps insisting Tyler tried to hurt her, delivered with that cracking voice she's used throughout the interrogation. It's a disturbing account, a severe, forceful, seemingly unprovoked incident involving the man she loved. A frightening fight-or-flight moment where she says she did what she had to do to make it out alive. It's a polished, tragic, and compelling story. But it's largely inconsistent with the facts. The problem with a fabrication, especially one this big, is that it still has to align with reality. It has to match the evidence. And Brittany's story is about to meet something she can't talk her way around her own body. The detectives listen patiently as she describes a desperate struggle. She makes a very specific, highly serious allegation he was pressing on her airway. This isn't a minor shove. It's an extremely dangerous, potentially life-threatening act. and it would leave clear, easily observable evidence. When the detective asks to take a look at her neck, she puts on the waterworks and points to the spot she claims Tyler caused. She lifts her chin. The detectives lean in. The interrogation room camera zooms. They look and they see nothing. There are no marks on her throat, no redness, no bruising, no crescent-shaped fingernail scratches from her own hands which would have instinctively clawed at his to pull them away. Nothing. They check her eyes. This is a key forensic step. In severe neck compression cases, pressure can cause tiny blood vessels in the eyes to rupture, a finding known as petechiae, and often seen in such events. Her eyes are clear. This is the gotcha moment. This is the entire case. So let's recap. No marks on her neck consistent with severe neck compression, but there are bruises on her knuckles. What story do those bruises suggest? They don't point to defense. They don't sound like a woman fending off an attacker. They suggest offense, a closed fist strike. They hint that she may have been the instigator initiating the confrontation. And then there's the biggest contradiction of all, the obvious fact driving this entire case, the wound. He sustained a gunshot wound to the back. How does that happen? I don't know, she wails again. The crocodile tears back on command. I would never want to hurt him. I would never shoot a person. I remember holding him and kissing him. Holding him after a shot to the back, an emotional display beside a man who had been gravely wounded. Brittany Holbrook is taken into custody and charged in connection with Tyler's death. The self-defense claim largely collapses under the physical findings, and the roommate's account of Tyler's final words a decisive point for investigators. But the case is about to get more complicated. Days after her arrest, one of Tyler's friends contacts Fox News. She says she has a story that changes the context, not a spontaneous alcohol-fueled mistake, but something that sounds premeditated. The friend, who remains anonymous, tells the reporter that after a few drinks, Brittany described what she wanted to do to a former boyfriend. I can't repeat the exact wording here due to platform guidelines, so I'll paraphrase, but you'll understand what she was implying. According to the friend, Brittany allegedly talked about seriously harming her ex in a very specific, deliberate way, describing the method with unsettling detail. This isn't a casual "I'm angry at my ex" comment. It's an explicit scenario laid out step by step. And the friend says it came out after a few drinks, the same condition Brittany was reportedly in on the night of the incident. The friend confirmed what we now know: when Brittany drank, she would get sloppy and aggressive. Suddenly, the soulmate narrative is shattered. This is a complex, troubled, and dangerously volatile relationship. We have Tyler, described as a wonderful guy who, when drinking, was said to show aggressive behavior, including grabbing at her neck during blackout episodes. And we have Brittany, a loving girlfriend, who when drinking was reportedly sloppy and aggressive, and who, according to a friend, talked about seriously harming an ex. I can't repeat the exact phrasing here due to platform guidelines, so this is paraphrased, but you understand the implication. The account suggests deeply unsettling intent far beyond ordinary anger. This was a powder keg, two volatile people fueled by alcohol living under one roof with a loaded gun. It wasn't a question of if it would explode. It was a question of when. And on June 17th, 2023, Brittany Holbrook was the one who lit the match. The moral ambiguity here is heavy. Tyler wasn't a perfect victim. He had his own demons and prior aggressive episodes. That's what makes cases like this so difficult and so heartbreaking. The justice system often seeks a single victim and a single villain, but the reality is frequently a tragedy shaped by two people. His prior aggression, however, was in the past, reported during blackout drinking. Her alleged aggression was hidden. Friends described an explicit scenario about harming an ex, and on that night, those patterns collided. His aggression was in the past. The night ended in his passing. Brittany Holbrook went on trial for Tyler's murder in early 2024. Her defense team had an impossible, unwinnable task. They had to convince a jury of two things. First, that Tyler's dying words that "B shot me in the back" were a lie or a mistake. That a dying man in his final breath chose to frame the love of his life for a crime she didn't commit. They would have to argue he was delirious, that he didn't know what he was saying. But Jordan's testimony was clear. He was focused. He was intentional. Second, that the complete absence of marks on her neck was irrelevant and that she'd experienced life-threatening neck compression despite an unmarked neck, clear eyes, and the fact that the wound was in his back. To accept that they'd need a scenario so convoluted and mechanically implausible that it strains credulity he was applying neck pressure, she somehow reached the firearm on the nightstand. He turned away, and then she discharged it, claiming self-defense. But that isn't what she described. She said he was on top of her. That detail boxed in her account. The prosecution, on the other hand, had a simple, linear, and devastating case. They had the roommate Jordan, who heroically, heartbreakingly recounted his friend's final damning words. They had the body cam footage showing Brittany's initial idiotic lie that she was asleep. They had the interrogation tape where the jury could watch her with their own eyes pivot to a new lie, the self-defense lie, only after it was fed to her by detectives. They had the medical evidence, or rather, the lack of it. The clear neck, the clear eyes. They had the bruises on her knuckles. They had the friend's testimony about her nature and her grotesque murder fantasies. And they had the gunshot wound. Clean, simple, in the back. It's the ultimate who are you going to believe scenario. Are you going to believe the woman who changed her story multiple times, whose physical evidence contradicts her every word, and who fantasized about gutting her ex? Or are you going to believe the man who told the truth with his very last breath? The jury didn't take long. In February 2024, they found Brittany Holbrook guilty. 2 months later, in April, she returned to court for sentencing. The judge, having heard all the evidence, all the lies, and all the crocodile tears, handed down a severe sentence. 40 years in prison, a 9-month relationship, a soulmate, a night of drinking, and consequences that will last for years. The story of Brittany Holbrook and Tyler Newlish is dark, complex, and ultimately straightforward. It's a story about the narratives we tell others and the ones we tell ourselves. In that interview room, Brittany may have convinced herself she was the victim, that she had no other choice. But the case record points another way. The bruises on her knuckles suggested aggression. The wound in his back pointed to force used from behind, hard to square with a claim of immediate self-protection. Her first statement, "I was asleep," read as panic. Her second, more elaborate statement there was "pressure on my neck," looked like a strategic shift. Both faltered against plain, immovable facts. This case raises difficult questions. What happens when the victim isn't perfect? Tyler had prior reports of aggressive episodes tied to heavy drinking. That context matters. But those past problems did not predetermine a fatal outcome, and they did not give Brittany Holbrook the right to decide his fate. Choices existed. Months earlier during the incident, she described as hands at her neck. 4 to 5 months prior, she could have called the police, sought a protective order, or left. She chose to stay to keep drinking with him and to remain in a volatile environment. That's the quiet tragedy that so often precedes dangerous escalation. Inaction and denial set the stage long before a crisis arrives. On June 17th, the conflict escalated again. Alcohol was involved. Accounts differ on the exact sequence. Instead of walking away, she moved toward the firearm. Investigators later weighed the physical indicators: an unmarked neck, clear eyes on exam, and a back wound, inconsistent with a face-to-face last resort defense. Taken together, those elements undercut the self-defense narrative and supported a different reading of the night's events. In the aftermath, according to the roommate's account, there was also a final statement from someone who didn't survive. Another point the investigation considered alongside the forensics. Here's the hard lesson. Red flags we ignore: early sloppy and aggressive intoxication blackout episodes. Prior physical confrontations rarely fade on their own. They escalate. Healthy relationships require boundaries, accountability, and the courage to walk away before harm compounds. If you ever feel unsafe, tell someone you trust, make a plan, and reach out to local support services. Seeking help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. There's also empathy to hold on to. People are more than their worst night. 2 imperfect humans, pressure from alcohol, and a weapon in the home made a tragic outcome more likely at every step. The compassionate response isn't to romanticize the turmoil or excuse it. It's to recognize the pattern early and choose a safer path. Alcohol doesn't build character, it reveals it. And here, it revealed an unsettling reality beneath a soulmate facade. In the end, the truth tends to surface sometimes as a lab result, sometimes as the absence of expected findings on exam, and sometimes as a final statement that points investigators to what really happened. Brittany Holbrook is serving a lengthy sentence at Homestead Correctional Institution in Florida. She has decades to reflect on the night her soulmate spoke his final words and on the choices that led there. If this analysis helped you think more clearly about warning signs and choices, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. And tell us in the comments, what boundary would you set early to keep a relationship from escalating?